Welcome in to a Wednesday edition of the Jordy Culotta Show, live here from the UDL. We'll talk to Ross Dellenger from Sports Illustrated coming up here an hour from now. The chef, Jean-Paul Bourgeois, will be here in the second hour today as we get you set here for another day leading up to LSU and Kentucky this weekend. Wildcats favored by 3.5. They'll be without one of their key defenders in that game. We'll tell you about it coming up here on the Jordy Culotta Show. Remember to like, share, comment on the post. We appreciate that very much. As
a lot of comments rolling in already for another trip around the sun for the birthday boy over there.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You.
Yes, sir.
Yes. 41, bro.
How's it feel?
Old.
Stand-up desks. This is the reason, the crisis.
Yeah.
It's all adding up in my head now. I'm starting to make a lot of sense of it.
Ordered a yellow Corvette. Gonna let my hair grow out.
Threw the Jeep out.
Yeah.
I need to go sports
Get
car.
a couple of bracelets.
Yeah, tattoo.
Yeah, maybe a tat. Why not? 41, bro.
This is normal.
Yeah.
Start a career, start a new business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild, bro.
Finally
starting to grow up a little bit.
Katie, can you do those taxes?
That adulting thing ain't all it's cracked up to be.
No, I don't think it ever was cracked up to be anything.
Well, I mean, you remember when you were a kid when you always wanted to be old? Were you one of those kids that always wanted to be old?
Well, you're just looking ahead to the freedom.
Yeah.
That's all you really want. Because what are you told your whole life when people are like, oh, you can't have that for dinner, then you see your dad eat a cookie, and you're like, well, I'm an adult. And you're like, well, I want that. Yeah. I want to be able to just do that and do whatever I want.
Sure.
And there's still those little...
Get in my car now.
Yeah, those glimmers of time. Exactly. Like when you're 12 and your cousins are like 17, they're like, they already left Thanksgiving. Like, I have to be here for another 4 hours while they get shit-faced, and I'm over here on the couch watching...
They're smoking cigarettes behind the barn.
Yeah, they're kissing.
Right.
Sean went to a party.
Appreciate everybody. We always are grateful for the interaction. Make sure you like and share. It's good to hear from everybody always. Thank you for the birthday wishes. Just a Wednesday here.
Just a Wednesday.
Gonna go to Gino's tonight. Little buys.
Say hey to Bo for me.
Yeah, why not? Get some of the good red sauce tonight. We'll talk LSU Kentucky. Ed Orgeron's going to be on his radio show tonight. He will also be on the SEC teleconference this morning.
Figured you'd be there. TJ Ribs for a little birthday dinner.
One from the back. One from the front. Culotta. Don't move your head.
That's a red dot.
That's right. SEC teleconference this morning. Ed Orgeron show coming up tonight, so we'll hear a lot about it. World's starting to implode on Orgeron and LSU. If you're watching around publicly and around the country, really a lot of people taking notice. I thought Josh Pate, who is very well respected, especially here in the Southeastern Conference for his college football insight and takes, really nailed it on the head. He's got good relationships down here in Baton Rouge and throughout SEC country, throughout SEC towns for getting his information. He's obviously dialed into LSU because he's got a really good take. If you hadn't checked it out, Cover 3, the podcast, the CBS football podcast, was talking a lot about LSU. Secrets out on the Tigers. They're dysfunctional. I mean, the world is no longer giving the respect in the 2019 really kind of thought that you had around the program no longer lives. The equity is burned up on LSU in 2019, and people have started to take notice on just how hot Ed Orgeron's seat is here within the 2021 season. So we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up here on the Jordy Culotta Show. Remember, every single day, True Blue Water, our favorite, TRU, bluewater.com. If you'd like to hop on the delivery route today, you can do that. In fact, we're about to replenish ours over here at True Blue Water. We always appreciate them for helping us out. Fresh water. Lizzie and I were talking about it yesterday. I know bottled water for a long time was considered
the hit.
But True Blue Water, man, it is fresh. When it hits a little different.
It hits. It's cold. It's like the perfect temperature. I don't know if it's the little Yetis that we got that keep it cold.
Yeah, your toes.
You can feel it hit your lungs a little bit. I don't know if it's because I'm severely dehydrated or if it's just that water hits just right.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I love it.
True Blue Water.
Delicious sips for the coffee. That is Majestic Coffee, locally brewed down here in South Louisiana. Get the office online at delicioussips.com. All of our phone guests, that's Dellenger, 8 a.m., checking in from Washington, D.C. He's been in Baton Rouge the past couple of days. And he's been in Baton Rouge the past couple of days. He's back up in Washington. He'll be here at 8 a.m. Spent a couple of days, in fact, he spent all day with Kim Mulkey, like driving to work with her, went to the office with her, went through the day with her, practice, recruiting calls, everything. So we'll get some information from Dellenger just about that one-on-one. And then Delly has been on the LSU beat, obviously, and covers college football. He understands kind of the lay of the land, the culture down here. And he spent a couple of hours doing some insight, getting some information on LSU football. So we'll see what he dug up here at 8 o'clock this morning. So really looking forward to that. And that's compliments of Metropolitan Health Group via the phone line. Metropolitan Health Group, real doctors, real solutions. Get in touch with Charlie Harvey and Jason Ramazan. Let them help you out today. They work directly with the lawyers. Get in touch with Metropolitan Health Group, real doctors, real solutions. And, of course, our official spice, Papa Earl's. Stop in High Neighbor, Calandro's, anywhere locally, Rouse's that you pick it up. Pick up a fresh can of Papa Earl's spice, 30% less sodium than the competition. So a healthier selection for you with Papa Earl's. It is interesting to see the takes around the country on Ed Orgeron. It really is in LSU football. And I have gotten a lot. We were out yesterday eating lunch, and I had two people come up to me. And one was looked like he was a little aggravated.
No.
Yeah, like with me. Like thought I was like he was annoyed with me in the sense of he thought that I've turned into like a drama guy, like looking for clicks, and he thinks that's what my Ed Orgeron rants are about. And I obliged and listened to him, and so I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening.
Tune in tomorrow if you want to hear my response. I'm
subscribe.
sure as hell not going to get into it right here at the lunch table.
In?
But I do appreciate you walking up, and I appreciate you more listening. And the other take was just kind of almost just flabbergasted at where it is now. Kind of where the program sits in just a short time after being on the mountaintop. How difficult it is to get to the mountaintop in college football, and the way that LSU did it really kind of shook the sport up. With the way that they climbed the mountain in 19 and got there and planted the flag. It really was just awe. It was just like, wow, look how good this college football team is. Every single week they're blowing teams out, ranked teams, away from their home, at home, neutral sites. It didn't matter. They were just dominant. They used that season to put together back-to-back top 5 recruiting classes. That is how you replenish a program who has been rated by the NFL draft. You go out and pick up 4- and 5-star guys, which LSU did better than just about everybody in the country. Top 5 class. You take the top 10 recruiting classes in the country every year, throw them in a hat, shake them up. No matter what team you pull out, you got good players, right? LSU's had the top 5 recruiting class past 2 seasons in being able to replenish that 2019 season, and it's been a debacle. 6-7 versus ranked teams, 8-7 since you pull out of the national championship a couple of years ago in New Orleans. The program is just headed in the wrong direction, and here is my ultimate beef with Ed Orgeron, the football coach. And again, I'm not going to make it personal, and I know people think that this is about, I heard it yesterday, clicks and drama. It's really not about that. I said a couple of things early on in this, in this venture where, we're able to be completely honest on this platform now. And sometimes you really have to weigh what the risk reward is on that stuff. And in my last stop, where we were for a decade. We had a very successful radio show. You had to be very measured in what you said. Never was I told you have to say this, but I was told numerous times you can't say that. So it was well understood that I was working at a place that was contractually bound to LSU. And things that we said on the air could have repercussions for the company. And if you were tied to LSU, for instance, through the 2015 season, I was the pre- and post-game host for the LSU Sports Radio Network's football coverage. So we traveled with the team. We'd be in the studio. We had full access to practice. And we went through the season, and that was the season that Orgeron was named interim head coach, and he decided to hire Derek Panamsky, and Panamsky was my co-host on that gig. And the rest of the season, from the Auburn game on, I did it by myself in the post game. But Jacob Hester would come in there and help out when he could. He had some other responsibilities that he had going on for the post game some days and the pregame. But he and I were filling in, and then we closed out the season, and basketball season started. And I made a comment about Johnny Jones on the daily radio show that we hosted at Guarantee, who's got a contract with LSU. And an hour later, after I made that comment, I was out. I was done with LSU sports. It was when Johnny Jones and that team, when they quit, when Ben Simmons and those guys, and they quit that season, they didn't accept the NIT bid. I made a comment about how they quit and how it was, it was shameful, really, at the time that Joe Oliva.
Your opinion on LSU Sports Radio Network? Are you
Exactly.
out of your mind?
So just to give you an idea of the type of repercussions that could and routinely would happen on a platform like that compared to a platform like this, where, I'm my own boss, really. I've taken and created relationships and hope to give you insightful information off of those relationships. But if those relationships don't like what I come and say here, then, they could stop feeding you information. And some people out there believe that since I had pissed off Panamsky and pissed off in pissing off Derek, I have killed my access with Orgeron, that I'm totally shut out from LSU football. In which I would say it was almost like after that became public, I would get more text messages from calls from people within, now knowing that, hey, we can talk to you because we always thought you were so close to Orgeron and Panamsky that we really couldn't tell you the information that we wanted to. Or, we always thought that you were stand up, or, we wanted to talk to you, but we didn't know how that information were going to go, with, how it was going to get fed back to the people up top. So, with making that statement and kind of giving my stance on my honest opinion of the program is all I did, and pissed off Derek, to which Derek, picked up his ball and left, and, fed Orgeron information and cut that off. Well, now I've got more information coming in from people in the program about really kind of what's going on. You know what I mean? It's not given to you in somebody's point of view that wants you to give it and present it in a certain tone. So in having that information, there is a risk and reward with putting it out there. You don't want to be the shock jock guy, because I'm not interested in that. I'm really not. And I know that since we've gotten on this platform, we've had some rants and some takes that have gone, into the mainstream, and it looks like it's a little dramatic, or it has a certain tone to it. And I'm really not that guy. I don't want to be a shock jock guy. I'm trying to give you an honest opinion while weighing the risk and reward of the relationships that you have of portraying the information that we have. And behind the scenes of LSU football, it has been chaotic for a while. This has been an ongoing theme for the program under the direction of Ed Orgeron, and it's no surprise to really anybody in that organization that they sit in this place going into the game this weekend where nobody really knows the stability of the program, the leader, on whether or not he's going to be able to make it through the season, maybe even make it through the week. So it's look, I want to make sure that people understand we're not in the shock business. We're not in the business where we're pulling for clicks. We feel like we've got an established voice. We've got a platform that people come to get information for, and we're going to give it to you honestly. And there is some risk and reward behind the scenes that goes into, being able to manage and keep those relationships. But I believe in this situation, in this platform, and in this instance, that the people deserve to know. I mean, you deserve to know how dysfunctional the football program is every single day. The majority of people just see it on Saturdays. And some people just see it for like 6 or 7 Saturdays of the home games you go to. You don't really take notice to the stuff that's happening on the sideline, the stuff that may be happening pregame, the stuff that may be happening after the game, the post-game press conferences, all that stuff. People just tune in and want to see LSU football play and be successful. In the last 2 years you've tuned in, you've seen a lot of dysfunction. And people are curious on, why is that dysfunction continually happening? Well, the way that it's continuing to happen, the why that it's continuing to happen, is because the leadership is chaotic and frantic and unguided. And all of that stuff is nothing but a trickle-down effect of touching the field on Saturdays and showing you just how out of touch and out of balance that program is. I mean, their rush stats right now, they're 128th out of 130 Division I football teams in running the ball. LSU football is 128 out of 130 teams in trying to rush the football going into October. Just when you say that out loud, you don't have to be a diehard. You don't have to be somebody who wears purple and gold sunglasses 24 hours a day to say, how in the hell has that happened at LSU? I mean, if you listen to Herb Street's podcast over at College Football Game Day on ESPN. Like I said, the 3-man cover podcast on CBS Sports. Josh Pate over at 247. These are guys, these are talking heads that people gobble up by the hundreds of thousands of clicks. You know what I mean? Like, people say that we're surfing for clicks. We touch about 8,200 people a day on average. If you're an advertiser, if you're somebody out there that potentially wants to buy, those are the analytics. We hit about 8,200 people a day.
Call it a smooth 10.
We'll call it 10,000. YouTube, Facebook, JordyCulottaShow.com. It's podcasted everywhere. It lives and breathes all day.
Instagram, TWITTA.
Everywhere where people are accessible to us, we touch about 10,000 people a day, which is pretty good for an independent podcast. It's been up and moving for about 10 months.
Did it twice.
The people that we're talking about are touching hundreds of thousands of people a day. And the message is being spread from those talking heads how dysfunctional LSU is. Kirk Herbstreit has openly asked and wondered about the effort. And I know that Kirk Herbstreit is not going to win a popularity contest in the state of Louisiana and throughout the LSU fan base, but he, much like Dick Vitale, which was my rub with Vitale, was that when he opens his mouth, good, bad, or indifferent, hundreds of thousands of people are going to hear that. And if he's out there spreading propaganda on LSU, that stuff that's just not true, then that's a very dangerous place to be with a national platform. What Kirk Herbstreit's doing and saying about LSU is justified. I mean, how can you really question what people from a national sense are saying about LSU when Josh Pate looks down here and says the culture is piss poor, and it has been under Orgeron? That is touching a lot of people, a lot of recruits. A lot of guys that are thinking about where they're going next are tuning into Josh Pate because he's sitting on 247's platform, which is one of the top recruiting databases in the world for college football, and all of those guys surf those sites all day. The Cover 3 podcast at CBS Sports hits about 30,000 people a day. And people are steady consuming that every day. I mean, the message is clear. The feeling is out there. You know, and Ed Orgeron and LSU football, I don't know. Like I've said before, they've got to vastly make crazy improvements to get this thing right. And they got to do it like overnight. And I just don't think that he has the capacity in the leadership qualities to manage people and get the best out of them to get that in return. That's why I think that this thing is cooked, that it's done. It doesn't matter what happens moving forward, barring winning out, beating Alabama on the road, beating Arkansas, doing things where you're just taken back. That would save him. Because the combination of the on-the-field product alongside the public relations just disrespect is gone. And that's why I believe Steve Ensminger has been brought back in and been more noticeable over the past week, past couple of days, is because they're preparing him, if they have to make a midseason move, in my opinion, to give him the interim job. Because there's nobody on staff that you could truly trust to turn the reins over to and say, get it through the finish line. But you can do that with Steve Ensminger. And Ensminger would have the peace of mind that I don't want this thing long term, but I'll make sure and try to park it as safely as I can for you. And right now, he's the only option I see. He's the only one that I would even look at around that program that you could say, yeah, I guess you could trust him to run it, you know, maybe for the rest of the season.
Because it's not about wins and losses anymore, right? If LSU had won or Coach O had won against Auburn, you would still be here with the same head-scratching mentality of, what did I just watch? Like, that's not a product that's sustainable no matter of wins and losses, right? Because of how, like you said, chaotic. It even looks like that on the field. And when you pair that with the off-the-field stuff, it's just chaos everywhere around. I mean, it's easy to circle the person who's the bringer of the chaos. Like, it's palpable. What he brings off the field turns into what's on the field. So I don't think it would matter if you either win out or if you beat Auburn Saturday or if you beat Kentucky this Saturday. It's just the way that it looks and the way that everybody has been so, I would say, turned off by the product.
It's unrecoverable in my opinion. Like,
even if you won last week.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
if it plays out the exact same way, but LSU wins, and it looks like that.
I don't know if it could have gone any worse for him last week. I think that was. I feel like I've said this a couple of times now, but I do feel like that was the death nail for him. You know what I mean? Like I have said a couple of times with some of the PR things and some of the things that was going on. And Kirk Taylor says, why not Corey Raymond? And I think Corey Raymond internally would be the best choice. And I got to watch what I say here because I don't want to say anything that could be disrespectful. But Corey Raymond, he has a stuttering issue where his communication skills are very self-conscious to him. And he is probably the most well-respected coach in that locker room. I'm talking about people will die for Corey Raymond, especially in that defensive backfield. I mean, you can talk to anybody who has been here and been around Corey Raymond. Corey Raymond was in the weight room when Patrick Peterson was here, and I still think they talk like 3 or 4 times a week. I mean, just a great relationship builder, a guy that can teach the game, very well respected, but he doesn't have the self-confidence to speak in front of a room like that or speak to the media with what the job would call for. I mean, there's a media schedule as an SEC head coach that you have to hit. It's a part of your contract, you know, where you have a weekly radio show tonight. I mean, Orgeron is contractually bound to be on the SEC teleconference this morning at 10 o'clock. He's contractually bound by LSU to be at his radio show tonight at 7 o'clock. He's contractually bound to meet with the press one time a week in his contract like he does on Mondays. I mean, after the game, you have to meet with the press. There's an interview that you have to do with LSU Sports Radio Network throughout the week. Shay's wife, Emily, has an interview with him that run. There's just a lot of media stuff that you have to do that Corey Raymond, he's not comfortable doing it. And, you know, you have to respect that. You know, if somebody comes out and says, I don't want it, I can't do it because I don't want that part of it. You can't make somebody do that. You can't force somebody to do that. And that's a part of the job that you have to do and you have to have. And look, Steve Ensminger doesn't want that part either. And I'm not here saying that I know that Steve Ensminger's in line to be the interim job, but if that's what they're doing, bringing him back around, so if they have to make a move and put him in that place, he's going to hate that part of the job. But I think he has the self-confidence to know that he can go out there and at least give you a couple of thoughts.
I mean, he would have to be. I mean, this sounds like a stupid question, but obviously he would have to be on the field, right, as the head coach.
Who?
If it's Slinger.
Yes.
Like, he'll have to be on the field.
Yeah, I mean, he's the head coach of the program.
Yeah, the communication will go through.
Well, I think the football stuff
will be fine.
It's fine.
I think it might get a little tighter if you have 2 offensive minds that are able to parry back and forth while the play clock's going down, as opposed to it going through a different headset where it seems like some communication might be lost along the way. I'd imagine a Slinger in there, you know, with like, yeah, do it, run it. I don't care. Go run your like, do whatever you want. Then if I have to check you, I will.
Yeah. Make sure and like and share the post, please. Comment on it. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week, because I think this week is, you know, one of those defining weeks where if they get beat again, I don't know if you don't see movement. You know, I don't know if you, because I think from LSU's administrative standpoint, they're trying to find holes to poke into the buyout where they can get out of here with as less of an expensive of a payoff as possible. But if it gets too bad on the field where you start to set really back this 22 recruiting class and you start to lose your grip of just the brand. I think that's what's happening to LSU right now. Their brand and the style of football is being crushed around the country. Like, people understand that Orgeron is a discombobulated, over his head guy right now. They realize that he just can't handle this job. It's way too heavy for him. Everything that goes into it, he just can't manage it. He can't lift it. He can't handle it. But the on the field product looks nothing like what LSU sells or was trying to sell in recruiting for so long. Dominant defense, this offense that was going to start to look like that Burrow year where, you spread the ball around and they put the ball in the playmaker's hand and you were able to have efficient offense and put up numbers. I mean, all of that stuff is being just, the recruits that are listening to this stuff worldwide are hearing the message that's being spread around LSU, and that stuff, that hurts you in recruiting. Because not only do you hear that from the media standpoint, then Saban calls you up this afternoon, and Kirby Smart calls you up this afternoon, and Dan Mullen calls you up this afternoon and says, "You hear what they're saying about LSU?" "Yeah, I am." You're not really thinking about going there anymore, are you? They don't even know who's going to be the coach there next Saturday, much less next year. That's the type of stuff that's happening to LSU behind the scenes with people in Louisiana, with Shaz Preston. That's happening to Shaz Preston every single day. That's happening to Jacoby Matthews every single day. That's happened to Le'Veon Moss every single day. Hell, that's happening to Walker Howard every single day. I've had that confirmed to me. People are blowing him up right now, just trying to get in, just trying to give me a crack. Give me a crease to be able to spread my message and let you know that you can live here. You don't have to go to LSU just because your dad did. You can come here and set records and win championships too. So, the Sharks are out on LSU right now.
Well, not only in recruiting, I'd imagine the transfer portal also. Because you've said, I don't know if it was Dellenger, but somebody had written an article about how coaches are actively recruiting people that are on teams. They're actively recruiting players that they think they can pull from another staff or from another football program throughout the year. They'll talk to you all year. It's a go-between. They'll talk to your high school coach. They'll talk to somebody.
Because they still have that connection.
They still have your number. They still have a connection. And the waters have been muddied so much by the transfer portal. It's not exactly illegal, but it's certainly uncouth. Yeah. You would never expect people to have to do that. But when LSU looks the way it does, why wouldn't you try to go after a Brian Thomas Jr. or a Chris Hilton who hasn't played? You see a Sage Ryan that's not out there, a Corey Kiner, Armani Goodwin. You could pluck one of those guys from LSU just because look at the stability that another school can offer versus what you're at now. You have no idea what's next. And LSU in 2019 was trying to push a global brand, a worldwide American brand with the things that they rolled out. LSU announced itself, and the turtling that's happened since then has been just an absolute. It's almost did more harm than good. Like what happened in 2019 and how effective that was, and to where all eyes were upon LSU for the last 2 years, and it's been embarrassing.
It's made the jokes hit harder,
right? Because what happened to the team that was putting out the hype videos, and now it's I don't even want to watch. How many times can I watch somebody boil crawfish?
They can't put out a hype video this week, can they?
He's only got one job.
But
I don't know how you hype up anything around LSU this week and put that out there without being mocked. I know that Panamsky has to have something to do this week, but I just don't know how you could find any type of positivity to spin in outside of showing me images of what was happening outside the stadium last week.
Right. Some fireworks. You could get the SOCOM, get the little, the fly in, do a 30-second trailer.
So it's going to be interesting today. A lot of media for Ed Orgeron. I'd imagine that he would be asked about it by the national media just because of the tone and the temperature of what is being said around him around the country. So it'll be interesting to hear what today is like for Ed Orgeron. Want to welcome in a brand new sponsor here and good friends. And in fact, it's where good friends meet. It's City Cafe. So now we've got the Oyster Bar on the south side of town with Phil's, and we've got the Oyster Bar on the north side of town, on the what would that be? The eastern side of town, in City Cafe, and Squeaky Miranda and his family, Cody Miranda, now running. It's been open for over 100 years. Started in Plaquemine. City Cafe is located over there on O'Neill Lane, and they're serving up great seafood, great lunch. In fact, their Sunday brunches start at 10 a.m. Stop in and see Squeaky and the crew. And I was in there yesterday, and they wanted me to let people know they are hiring right now for all positions. kitchen, front, managerial spots, everything, bartenders. They're looking for personnel right now. So if you're looking for a job, if you've got experience in the restaurant game, get in touch with City Cafe. CityCafeBR.net is where they're located online, and they are on O'Neill Lane. So check them out there. Welcome aboard City Cafe. It's great to have them here. Squeaky Miranda is one of those guys that don't have to tell him what you got going on. He's always been a lifelong and a long-time supporter of what we had going on. So he's the best. They run City Cafe. Go in there and see them. Where good friends meet. There's always somebody in there. Every time you go in there, there's somebody that you know, and it's always packed. I was in there for lunch yesterday, and people were waiting to get tables on a Tuesday. So check out City Cafe, citycafebr.net, and that Sunday brunch is fantastic. So make sure and check that out. Urban Meyer, talk about awkward.
Well, I put up a poll just now. Who would you rather be, Urban Meyer or Coach O this week?
That's a hell of a question, because I mean I wonder whose seat is hotter, because I mean it looks like the walls are closing in on Urban as well. That statement that Sean Kahn made, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, I mean straight up came out and said Urban Meyer has got to earn our respect back. And if you have seen what is kind of happening with Meyer and this Jacksonville team, these NFL guys, this locker room, they're laughing at him. He had a team meeting called for Monday with the entire team, where he was going to go in there, explain the story, give his apology, and kind of be forthright about what had happened. And he cancels that meeting 5 minutes before it's supposed to happen. So you got everybody in the room when it's canceled, which gives everybody the ability to kind of like just land blast this guy. And then he meets with specific position groups one-on-one and tells them that he apologizes about distracting the team. And then he's asked about getting his team ready to play and says it's not his responsibility, it's that of the team leaders in the same press conference. I really don't know which one is worse. I mean, like, the fact that you have the video out there after the apology is just embarrassing in itself.
You got the second angle that came out after. It wasn't just dancing to her.
Right.
Those hands were frisky.
Nobody was trying to pull you to the dance floor, bro. You were trying to pull panties to the side. I mean, like, he was, bro, he was knuckles deep in that thing in his own bar.
She posted that on her Snapchat.
And here's the deal. She didn't budge. So it's like been happening all night. You know what I mean? Like, think about when somebody grabs your ass, or when you grab somebody's ass for the first time. There's always that, whoa. You know what I mean? Like, hey. You know what I mean? Like, okay, are we doing this in public? This is your place, bro. You know what I mean?
Name is on the building.
Did you see I sent you the little meme that was Tim Tebow and then the picture of Meyer, and it was like he's had a rough time with tight ends.
I mean, the jokes, the meme. I mean, just like LSU. I mean, Ed Orgeron and Derek Podamski have made LSU football a meme.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a joke. Turn on podcasts around the country. Listen to the media. Listen to people. It's not just me. It's not just Moscona. It's around the country of people talking college football. I mean, they are pointing and laughing at Ed Orgeron and LSU football and Derek Podamski. I mean, just like openly mocking these guys.
And isn't that their biggest like fear? Because as you know, they can't really fearmonger or control national media.
Well, they've tried.
I know, but they don't care. Like the Kirk Herbstreit doesn't need access to your LSU football program. Like, he's going to get his information from somewhere else. So they, as much as they want to be able to put their thumb on Baton Rouge and try to quell any stories that come out of here, once this thing goes national the way it has, there's no control in the narrative anymore. Like, it is what it is now, and people know.
Podamski really started to lose a lot of his power last year when he sent a text message to Reese Davis on College Game Day after they ran a game day piece, and Podamski was like telling him how he should explain the narrative on game day, and Reese Davis was like, who is the bleeping radio guy texting me about what to say on game? Who does this guy think he is? And like got back to like the LSU people and was like, yo, screenshot. I was like, tell your boy to lose my number. And once that stuff started like circulating within like the administration and people were like, hang on, hold up, hang on. It's one thing to do it to the, one team, one podcast. It's one thing to do it to the Jordy Culotta Show. It's one thing to do it to the afternoon radio guy in Baton Rouge. It's another thing to do it to the college game day host on ESPN, the most successful television show built around sports in the history of television. And this guy thinks he can control them from some closet in the LSU football office by texting him on game day. I mean, people were like, who do they think they are? That they can like tell people what to say, how to say it, and when to say it, when their program is flaming, is burning nationally. And this is a year later and they still can't get a play in. What do you think people are going to say about you? I mean, that is what's happened with Urban Meyer in Jacksonville. I mean, Orgeron and Panamsky have made LSU a walking joke in the sport.
Well,
I mean, people
public.
are pointing and laughing at the
public.
Like they're like Herb.
Herb's pointing the most. Herb could have spun that thing into a team meeting where he could have got like a little
he could have gotten a little bit of like,
attaboy,
okay,
look, I'm sorry,
little street cred,
right?
You know what I mean? And not because of that, just because like, hey boy, look I screwed up,
you saw
bro.
me. Look.
I screwed up. You know what I mean? I mean, and even like bringing up Trevor Lawrence in the apology. If I'm T-Law, I'm like, yo, bro,
I didn't even know
don't
we went
put
to
me
Vegas.
in that. You know what I mean? Like, what if now Trevor Lawrence has got to get home and his newlywed wife is like,
That was Vegas.
why does Urban Meyer feel like he's got to tell you to watch your back in Vegas? I mean, Trevor's probably like, huh? Well, yeah. I mean, your coach brought you up in his apology today. Like, what?
Shifted the blame. Just
Yeah,
look over
like
there.
Herb's like, go get the franchise quarterback. He went to Vegas on his bachelor party. I told him to stay away.
could
People are
never
like, whoa, what? What are you talking about?
I could never have done this to Tebow.
Yeah, right. I mean, dude, it's.
But it feels like Urban Meyer's a master of his own design. Like, he wants this to happen. It feels like he's kind of out. I mean,
Yeah, I think so, too.
It seems
I
very
think so,
coordinated.
too. I
His
think so,
wife,
too.
his
Well,
wife
even-
tweeting, like,
I mean,
you
like,
just saw your husband with his knuckles up a 19-year-old girl's body. I mean, he's in her heart. And then she tweets out, Bubby needed a night out. It's like, sure did. But better her than me.
I mean, it's just amazing to see. But I'm with you. I think Urban Meyer's trying. I mean, like they've
timeline.
given him the rope, and he's like, no problem. Here,
Yeah.
let me hang myself. Let me get the hell out of
Put it
here.
next to the other 3 ropes I've hung up here.
Yes. I mean, he doesn't want to be. He's getting eaten up. He's getting eaten alive.
The USC timing. This is not. I mean, if you really want to connect the dots.
Yeah, but if I'm USC, I'm staying away from this guy right now. I really am. I mean, he's had to apologize everywhere he's been.
LSU can't touch him.
No way. He's had to apologize for what his time was at Florida. He's had to apologize for things that he did at Ohio State. I mean, he had a staff member who was openly abusing his wife physically. I mean, the wide receivers coach at the time, remember, who was caught up in the
He defended him.
in the domestic abuse, and Urban kept him aboard, knew about it, had to come out, apologize about it, letter was let go about it. I mean, at Florida, the locker room that he had built there was, I mean, you had Aaron Hernandez and Riley Cooper in the same locker room. Enough said, right? I mean, you had a mass murderer and a walking racist. I mean, just like out loud racist. In the same locker room, and Urban was leading Bible studies at his house. You know what I mean? Like it was.
He taught a leadership committee.
just-
He taught a leadership class at Ohio State. I mean, Zach Smith, as we were talking about, and then he tries to hire at Jacksonville the Iowa former strength coach that was also like known for being racist and treating players poorly. And he tried to sneak it in. They did a mega dump of all the hires, and then one was like this guy that should not be touched by any coach in college in any sport, much less college football or the NFL.
Right.
And Urban tried to sneak him in on the Jacksonville staff, and he was like, "Shit, this is how the NFL works." I got caught. Like immediately, it's the first thing he tried to do. At Ohio State, that slides right between the cracks.
Urban liar is what a guy told me. They call him on the recruiting trail. A college coach who's gone up against him. Like when you follow up Urban, and go into the in-homes, like they would be like, well, Ohio State, and Urban said, and I mean, they would have to call him back, like, after they decide, how'd Urban Liar work out for you? He lied his ass off.
Hell of a salesman.
Just sold his ass off, and here didn't have anything that he said come to light, come to fruition. So it was watching Urban Meyer manage that apology, manage that press conference, hear the reaction from his team, hear the reaction from local media. I mean, it feels very similar to the world that LSU football is living in around Ed Orgeron, where, I mean, it's almost like if you don't laugh at it and you take this stuff serious, that would drive you nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, if that was your head coach and you saw him hanging out, wasted, trying to chase 20-year-olds publicly 2 nights after he gets his teeth kicked in on national television in an NFL game after their 4th straight loss, I mean, that would make you want to go crazy if you were all in on the Jags, right? I mean, if you didn't start to laugh at that, you would wonder, this is driving. I mean, you see the stuff with Orgeron. I mean, Orgeron stuff is, you got to laugh at it. You know what I mean? Like, because if you don't laugh at it, it's, like I said on Saturday, those 2 guys that I sat next to, that father-son combo, they're still pissed off. Like today, this morning, this Wednesday, they are still ruined by how that game played out on Saturday, because they just live it, love it, and breathe it all the time, all day. And the on-the-field product is comical.
Maddening.
It's comical. I mean, they don't even know how to use a timeout. They can't get a play in. They don't have their personnel right. They don't play the right guys. They don't give the guy, they don't play the running back that gives you the only chance of putting a run game together. It's just
and then it's the office. It's the office scene where everybody's pointing the guns at each other. Like, nobody knows who to blame here. Coach O's got a gun this way. Jake Peets is pointing back this way. Liam Shanahan has a gun pointed at him. And he's just apologizing all the time. He's like, I didn't sign up for any of this. Like, I was coming in because y'all don't have a center. And all of a sudden, he's getting a bunch of shit on his lap. He's like, look, I'm just trying to play some football. Look, I know we're about to be good. Says all the right things. But it just seems like there's one way to point the finger. And the way that this thing is played out, it's just a cast of misdirections all over the place, to where, I mean, it's just easier to get rid of it.
Chris Jarrell asked, do you want to win games or not? I want the players to win games for sure. I definitely think that for these players, you definitely want LSU to win the games. And like I said, I think that this thing is already cooked. Barring going undefeated for the rest of the season and winning at Alabama, blowing out Arkansas, beating Texas A&M, beating Ole Miss, beating Florida, winning at Kentucky this weekend. Like winning all those games and turning this thing completely around. Well, maybe, maybe he saves it, but I think it's cooked. So, yeah, I mean, I want LSU to win games, because I think you want the players to have a positive experience. I'm pro player, really. I don't want anything from a player standpoint to have to be sabotaged because their coach can't keep his dick in his pants. Really. Like, that's because he's so worried about getting out there and being relevant and
cool.
Like, how many stories have people heard now since this stuff has come? I got more people telling, like, he's hanging out at like Ben 77 in the middle of like the summer, like just sitting there like creeping on people, like just like stuff where you're like, what is going on? Like, where is your head, man? You can't
Which
be.
one?
It can't be this far gone where you've just totally lost all interest in the team. But Scott Oldham says, Jordy, realistic coach gets here. I don't, look, man, I've said my top choice would be Lane Kiffin. I think that Lane Kiffin makes you so relevant immediately on one side of the ball and has such coaching awareness of who he is that he knows he's got to bring in somebody on the defensive side of the ball to really maintain that side, because the offense is going to be top 5 in the country every year, and you're going to have a quarterback. Blake Sims, Jacob Coker are the greatest examples that you can give on Lane Kiffin's genius, his greatness of making those guys relevant. You know, I mean, just being able to play at a competitive level and competing for championships with those guys. I mean, if he can make Blake Sims a quarterback, what the hell's he going to do with Garrett Nussmeier? What's he going to make Walker Howard look like? You know, I mean, working alongside guys like Brian Thomas and Chris Hilton and Malik Neighbors and Jack Besh and Keyshawn Butte potentially for another year. I mean, that is just crazy to think about, the numbers that he could put up. So, you know, I mean, Lane Kiffin's my top choice, but I trust Scott Woodward. I trust Scott Woodward to make this move. And I think that Scott Woodward took the LSU job knowing and anticipating that this move's probably going to come sooner than later. He probably understood, even though he walked into the job in 2019 where it was just red carpet treatment for the LSU football program. Everywhere they went, people threw rose petals at their feet to make sure the soles of their shoes didn't touch the cement. I mean, they were royalty when Scott Woodward got to Baton Rouge. Hence the contract and the extension. Now, I think Woody probably at night still has some times where he just regrets the number he put on the back end of it, but 15-0, national championship, SEC title winners, Heisman Trophy winner, 16 draft pick. I mean, just the best college football team ever. Best college football team ever. So his hands were a little tied in the sense of, got to pay the guy, got to reward him, got to get him to a point where he's competitive within the championship coaches in the game.
Even though you know nobody else is going to hire Ed Orgeron, you have to do it just because if you come in as a first-year athletic director after a coach wins a national championship, you have to extend him. Otherwise, like, what's the smoke around the program
right.
now? It's like, oh, Scott Woodward from Baton Rouge already has animosity with the head coach that he didn't hire. Like, especially with Scott Woodward's reputation of going big game hunting and finding like the coach that this is how he wants to plant his flag. So he had to almost do a little PR in advance just to make sure this transition was smooth. Like, you don't want to be at odds with like you said, with how LSU football was at that time. Yeah. The smart play is to extend Ed Orgeron. Otherwise, you're at odds with what seems to be the ultimate power in college football at the time, because they're challenging Alabama. And who knows how high this rocket can fly. So it's just the easy thing to do is to extend him, as opposed to cause like you don't want somebody on a one-year deal playing for their job every year. Obviously, you can look back and play armchair quarterback, but I mean, he really had no choice.
Trevor Seth, Jordy, have you ever thought you may be wrong about the Kiffin pick? I'm not saying that I'm right. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that it's happening. I'm saying that if it was up to me, I think that Kiffin would be the best choice. And I see that people disagree. Chris Terrell says Kiffin is no different than Urban. Chris, that's a lazy take. I mean, really. That stuff with Lane Kiffin, that's a decade ago. That stuff with, you haven't really heard anything about Lane Kiffin off the field since he's been at power in Boca Raton, or since he's been in power at Ole Miss. In fact, I would argue that it looks like he has worked on repairing his image more than he's worked on trying to knock it down. I mean, he knows what is said about him, and I think some of those antics early on was his youth and his brashness and learning on the job with the Oakland Raiders, learning on the job with the Tennessee Volunteers, and learning on the job with USC, and even learning more in being tucked away in Tuscaloosa as an assistant coach, and seeing what successful programs really, really look like. He saw it with Pete Carroll, but he didn't really respect it because he was so young. I mean, remember, Lane Kiffin is kind of like a Manning. I mean, the Kiffin name within football is football royalty. Monty Kiffin, I mean, he invented a defense. The Tampa 2 is orchestrated, published by Monty Kiffin. I mean, Lane grew up in locker rooms. He grew up around players. He grew up around that culture. He grew up around football. I'm not making excuses for him, but I think the fact that we compare him to Urban Meyer, Urban's close to 60 years old, still out at bar rooms, shoving his fingers up girls' dresses. I mean, Lane Kiffin, I don't worry about him doing that. I really don't. in a big-time job. I think he's so focused on trying to win a championship and establish his coaching greatness, because a lot of the early stuff around him was the off-the-field stuff, the circus stuff, the chasing, all the stuff that he was doing. I think that, people deserve to be evaluated on who they are presently. And presently, he just doesn't seem like he's that guy. I don't know him. I don't know him, but the data says, in a social media world, in a tweeting world, that if Urban Meyer's out, if Lane Kiffin's out, you're going to see it. It's going to be there for you to view, and he hadn't been there. It seems like he has rehabilitated that part of who he is, and he's focused on football. And if he's focused on football, he's a dominant coach. I mean, I don't think that we can debate that. I mean, he's a dominant offensive coach. I mean, he is the best play caller in college football. GoFlow IV Health and Wellness brings you the Jordy Culotta Show. They're Baton Rouge's premier medical spa specializing in IV hydration, treatments with vitamin infusion. Got a text last night. Jordy, what's that IV spot that you're always talking about? GoFlow IV Spa right there on Jefferson Highway. Check them out. Memberships are available. They can help you out with dehydration, skin, hair, and beauty care. They can also help you out with athletic performance, illness and recovery, chronic illness, or if you just need help with a hangover. Get over to GoFlow IV, GoFlowIV.com. We'll talk more college football with Ross Dellenger next here on the Jordy Culotta Show. Go Chevrolet is proud to announce Go Express Auto Sales, the new used car lot located in the capital city of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, at 11522 Florida Boulevard. Go Express Auto Sales is online at goexpressautosales.com, or you can search them on Facebook and social media at Go Express Auto Sales, the newest addition to the family of Go Chevrolet. Remember, Go Chevrolet is located down in Laplace, Louisiana, but now welcoming aboard Go Express, the new used car lot located in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at 11522 Florida Boulevard. True Blue Water, true hydration at its finest. Right now, you're only a few minutes away from getting your 5-gallon water delivered to you, just like we are over here at the UDL. All you got to do is log on to truebluewater.com. That's TRU bluewater.com. The website's fantastic over at truebluewater.com. You can get your service and find out how quick it is. You can schedule a delivery, even hop on the billing system right there at truebluewater.com. TRU bluewater.com. Gearing up for spring and summer down here in South Louisiana, and you want to keep your lawn maintained during these sunny seasons, get in touch with our friend Blake Abear over at Abear's Lawn Maintenance, where he says, you grow it, I mow it. 225-485-8022. 225-485-8022 is where you can find Abear's Lawn and Maintenance, the official lawn and maintenance company of the undisclosed location. The football gods are definitely against us at flag football over at Traction. Rained out again. I don't know how many games we have to make up right now. We were going to play 2 last night to make. I think we have 6 makeup. We've only played 1 time. Played 1 time. The season's been open a month.
You can't play a game. How many would you play in a row? How many do you get away with? Triple header.
Yeah. I mean, that third one would be tough, but
Orange slices and a Capri
10,
Sun.
bro.
They'll be
I
fine.
can run all day.
Yeah.
Ross Dellenger covers college football for Sports Illustrated. Very well connected down here in Baton Rouge. Very much looking forward to the piece of him and Kim Mulkey as he had an inside look at the LSU women's basketball program under the leadership of the Hall of Famer, Kim Mulkey, in her first season. And she's got new offices being built over there in the Athletic Admin building. She's got hopefully some additions to the PMAC coming here over the next couple of seasons. And she's probably going to put a pretty competitive group on the floor in year one. We'll also talk to Delly about the state of the LSU football program. It's good to have you back, man. How are you?
Good, Jordy. How you doing?
Doing good. Tuscaloosa last weekend, right?
Yeah, Alabama Ole Miss. I got to see the popcorn game.
that didn't work out well for old Lane. Hell of an environment. What did you learn in that one?
I think learned what we kind of knew, right? That Alabama is probably, even though Florida gave them a run down there, and I was at that one too a few weeks ago, that Alabama is head and shoulders probably above anybody else in the SEC aside from Georgia, and probably head and shoulders above anybody else nationally aside from Georgia. So that's right now what it looks like. And then the other thing I learned obviously is that Ole Miss is, because I really thought the game would be close, especially given what happened last year. Ole Miss has a better team this year, and last year, kept with them. It ended up being a 2-touchdown game, but they ended up scoring like 48 points against Alabama last season. And I just thought it would be a better game, and it's pretty clear that, again, Alabama's just a lot better than everybody else around them, especially in their division in the West.
Where, from the Alabama-Georgia standpoint, do you see anybody competing with them? Is there anybody that can run with them that you've seen up to this point?
Not really. Not that I've seen. I don't. Iowa obviously has a big test this weekend against Penn State at home in a big game. So that's certainly a big one. I don't know if Iowa has the skill players, and kind of every year you ask yourself that, does Iowa have the skill players to match up with the elite of college football? I don't know that they do. Penn State might. That's certainly a team to watch. I kind of think Iowa's going to win that game at home this weekend. They don't make mistakes. They're a really solid team. It's hard to say Cincinnati, if you're going to go through them team by team, Cincinnati would be the next one. And I don't, the quarterback is great. They have a solid defense. But again, the horses and the skill players to run with the teams like Alabama, I don't necessarily expect them to have. And then you kind of start going down the list like Oklahoma, and I mean, we've all seen Oklahoma. I think as my colleague wrote, Pat 40 for the last couple of weeks, are the biggest fraud in college football. I mean, they have barely won some games, really tight games, haven't really looked great at all in any game. It seems like certainly haven't played a full half of a solid, strong full half of football. So it's just hard. Again, it's hard to see them, running with the Alabamas. And then Ohio State lost at home to Oregon, and Oregon lost to Stanford. It's tough, man. It's really tough. It feels like we have more parity in college football this season than ever before, but at the very top, it's the same, the one or two teams. But we at least might have some couple of different teams in the playoff than we normally have had. The problem is, I don't think those two maybe new teams can keep pace with the two other teams that we're talking about.
You mentioned how there's a little bit more parity in the league, and doesn't it set up for? Obviously, this 4-team construct the way it is, it seems like it'll be Georgia has a chance to play Alabama in the SEC championship, then turn around and be in the playoff regardless. Correct?
Absolutely. I'd you could right now you could there's a lot of ball to be played, but you could see Alabama and Georgia meeting as undefeated teams in the SEC championship game, and as number one and number two ranked teams. In the loser being in the playoff, probably being the 2 or 3 seed in the playoff, and the winner being obviously the 1 seed in the playoff, and then you'd have 2 other teams. And I think there's a good chance that one of the other teams is an undefeated Big Ten championship team, or even a one-loss Big Ten championship team, because that seems to be far and away the second best league this year. And so then you have the 4th spot, right? That could be fought over. And I don't know. There's a lot of teams there, right? I know we discussed Oklahoma. There's an Oklahoma. There's a Oregon, and of course there's a Cincinnati. And I think this year is the year that maybe we see a Group of 5 team in, and this year is the year that we probably don't see an ACC team in the playoff.
Ross Dellenger joining us here. He is from Sports Illustrated, one of the college football faces and pins that you know very well, covering the sport. It would be interesting to see what an expanded playoff would look like this season.
It would. I take a look. I started in week 3 every week. Every Monday, I kind of look at the current standings in college football and put together a 12-team bracket based on the proposed format, expansion format from over the summer, and it's been real interesting. It poses some tough it had some tough debates, on who the and also I will say it really kind of doing this every week. It really has taught me a lot and kind of has prepared me of what to expect, and has really exposed some issues with the 12-team format. Honestly, you have, the last 2, 3, even 4 teams in, you're scratching your head going, why in the heck are they in a playoff? What are we doing? Why would they be in a postseason? And then you have some rematches that you can't really avoid, especially in the quarterfinals. You'd have rematches of games we already played. So it's funny. I kind of was sold on the 12-team. The conference commissioners had sold me on the 12-team playoff because I'd always been kind of an 8-team guy, and they kind of sold me and convinced me that 12 teams was the way to go and made the most sense. In a lot of ways it did, but when you start doing it and seeing how it would work, you start coming up with a lot of rematches and a lot of teams that maybe don't belong. It's just and then I'm almost going back to my 8 teams would probably be enough.
It doesn't matter if the playoff was 350 teams this year. I don't know if LSU would get in. What do you make of the state of LSU football? First time they lose to Auburn at home since 1999. The seat felt like it was warm for O going into the season. It ratcheted up after UCLA cooled down over the last 2 weeks, and it is hot as hell right now going into Kentucky. How do you feel about the state of this program where it is right now?
Well, it's obviously in a not a great situation. And when I watch a LSU football team for years now, maybe even decades, they've always done 2 things really well. They've run the football. They always could run the football. And number 2, they've defended pretty well. And while this team its real issue isn't necessarily defense, we know what happened last year, right? And the issue was defense. And this year it's the running game. So it's those 2 things that LSU has done so well for so many years. Over the last 2 years have been not just below par, right? But like one of the worst units in the nation. I mean, last year defensively, one of the worst units in the nation. And this year's rushing offense is one of the worst units in the nation. And it's just, it's been kind of hard to watch that. And you just kind of scratch your head. And how did it get to this point? And you had to have that game last Saturday. It's a home game against a first-year coach and a team that had just had to come back to beat I think an FCS team the week before. You just felt like you had to have that game to get momentum and maybe get to the 7-8 win mark. And now you're staring down the barrel of a 4-8, 5-7 kind of situation.
We have seen Scott Woodward in control of football hires, and he is a big game hunter. Speculation, of course, right now, this job is still filled by Ed Orgeron. It feels like there's going to be movement on it at some point. Do you get a feel of just kind of early on here, any names to watch out for? I'm not asking for a list or who's going to get the gig, but if it were to open up, Scott Woodward, LSU, is there anybody that makes sense?
Well, I think you nailed it. He is a big game hunter. Scott is he goes after the top. You could just look at his track record, and that's been the case. He paid Jimbo Fisher $7.5 million and gave him a 10-year contract, plucking him from Florida State while Scott was at A&M. Before that, he landed the guy that nobody thought would leave Boise State, Chris Peterson, and then. This past year is one of the best examples. Went to Baylor and got Kim Mulkey, 3-time national championship women's basketball coach. So he goes for the top. And in the top of the sport, the top, right? There's just a handful of names. And, one of them is obviously the guy he hired at A&M, Jimbo. And he's got a contract with no buyout. He's also got a team that might lose 5 games this year. Then you move to the guy who's in Jacksonville coaching the NFL team, who I'm sure would have gotten a call or LSU would have put out feelers before this weekend. But now what happened last weekend probably rules him out of any college job. Certainly a job at a school that is dealing with Title IX issues. And you go to some guys who stepped away from the game, like a Bob Stoops or Chris Peterson. And from what I understand, Chris Peterson's not interested in returning to football right now. And I don't know Bob Stoops' situation. I don't even know if Woodward would be interested in that. But certainly he's a guy that a lot of schools would want to come and coach their programs and sit at the top. And then, you go to the next rung, right, of candidates out there who are some of the big names right now you hear thrown around for the USC job and other jobs, like Luke Fickell at Cincinnati, James Franklin at Penn State, Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Those would probably be the next run in my mind of a list. And then you've maybe even got the next rung, right, where you have guys like Bill O'Brien, Alabama's offensive coordinator, who went to Penn State and been in the NFL. You got Billy Napier at down the road at Lafayette, Matt Campbell up there at Iowa State. So that would be just off the top of my head a list of kind of 3 rungs. And again, Scott is a guy who probably starts at the top.
How much? I know that you're not down here on the beat every day like you were, but you're still around college football and have great relationships. How much does this feel like the end of Les Miles?
Well, it's funny because the end of the Les Miles, his teams usually did the things that we just talked about, the 2 things, right, that we just talked about. They always could run the football. If they couldn't run the football, they still tried. And they got enough yards where they looked like they could run the football statistically. And they played pretty good defense. I mean, they're toward the end of his tenure, we all know what the problem was, right? It was passing the football and not modernizing the offense. So on the field, it looks a lot different. The way it's ended. Off the field, like you said, I'm not there as much. I don't know within the facility what's happening. I know that, late in the Les's tenure, there was so much frustration about the offense in the building that it had caused enough issues. And I don't know what the the situation is necessarily in the building, how it would compare to that right now. But obviously, when you what I'm fascinated by, and look, I'll be honest, I took a trip to the administration tower while I was in town visiting Kim Mulkey and snooped around as best I could. I didn't really find out any information, but I'll tell you.
Deli's here.
Erase the whiteboard.
Yeah, right.
There's some people in that tower that really just scratch their heads on how can you not get a play in an adequate amount of time.
Sure.
And that has been some. And again, I covered the LSU UCLA game. I only was able to watch the fourth quarter of the Auburn game, so I haven't seen LSU week to week. But apparently, that's been an issue, and I can just sense the frustration in that.
Ross Dellenger here. Last one, I'll get you out of here. Thanks as always for your time. You spent some time with Kim Mulkey. You mentioned it. You were down here in Baton Rouge earlier this week. We had her on Monday, and actually, Kramer Robertson just got the word. He's been called up to the travel squad for the St. Louis Cardinals. He was on the taxi squad. Now he was actually dressed out and taking BP with St. Louis last night at Chavez Ravine at Dodger Stadium. So great to see a former Tiger and Kramer Robertson getting his shot in the major leagues right here during playoff time. I know that Kim Mulkey is very excited about that. Her and I were trading some text messages about the news last night. But you spent time with her. People are fired up about her around LSU women's basketball. Ticket sales are soaring. People are looking for new energy. She is going to bring it. What did you learn about the Hall of Famer in the time that you spent with her?
Yeah, well, my relationship with Kim goes back to Kramer when I covered the baseball team for the Advocate. It was Kramer played, and we got to establish a little bit of relationship with her. It was great seeing her again, and spent basically the whole day of Monday with her. And she's a character, right?
Yeah.
She's you don't have to ask too many questions to get Kim talking and get Kim going. And it was great to kind of spend time with her. And she's it might take 2, 3, 4 years or so, but that woman is determined, and her track record proves that how incredible a coach she is. So I'm sure she'll have the Tigers back going very soon. And it was good to spend some time with her. And she kind of found the news out a little bit while I was with her about Kramer, and so it was pretty exciting. She's certainly pumped up for her son, and that's the big time, man. It doesn't get much bigger than that. Playoff baseball, you're in the clubhouse on the team practicing and all that stuff. So, it obviously made my time with her a little better. She was in a great mood for sure.
I bet. Long time coming for Kramer, and I know that Coach has been on top of that and wondering why that has not happened for sure. Yeah, she's been pretty hell to deal with, I'd imagine, for the AAA affiliate for the St. Louis Cardinals. Where are you at this weekend? I know Texas Oklahoma plays. What game you checking out? You going in person?
No, I am home.
Nice.
So I've been on the road for about a week, so I'm going to stay home and watch. It's a little bit of in a way, a light week. Obviously, yeah, you do have OU and Texas, a big game up in Iowa with Penn State. Pat Forty will go to that, but I'll chill at home and probably be back on the road next week.
Good for it, man. Thanks for the time this morning. It was good to have you down in Baton Rouge again. We'll talk soon.
All right, Jordy. See you.
All right, man. There he is. Ross Dellenger checking in this morning from Sports Illustrated. Good insight there from Delly as he was on that LSU and Les Miles beat, and gives you some of the similarities to what he's hearing and some of the things happening around LSU football right now that feels, like almost a trip back in time for the crew. We will talk to Nick Underhill of New Orleans Football here coming up in the next couple of minutes and get his ideas on the Saints. Tough weekend for the Saints last weekend at home versus New York. They'll be on the road Sunday taking on the Washington football team. So we'll talk to Nick about this week's practice, what to anticipate around LSU, around the Saints football facility. Remember, daily, we're brought to you by A-Bears. A-Bears Markets, A-Bears Specialty Meats. You can find them online at abearsmarkets.com. But if you are a tailgater if you are looking for some great meats to throw on the tailgate, whether it's a Friday night, Tigers are away this weekend in Lexington, Saints away in Washington. So if you need some stuff to get ready for the next couple of weeks, get in touch with Hebert's Markets. Hebert's Specialty Meats is out there on Highway 73 in Dutchtown. Stop in and see them at the Dutchtown Shopping Center. You can pick up a great selection, like we tell you all the time, steaks, burgers, specialty meats, turduckens. What's up?
Does Kentucky storm the field again if they win?
I wouldn't think so.
Are they out?
I wouldn't think so.
I guess they're better. But
is LSU a storm the field team anymore?
I don't know. I would imagine
Maybe
you
for
harken
Kentucky.
back to Kentucky and what happened, the Bluegrass Miracle.
That was the first time they had beaten Florida. That was something that they had to get over. You know what I mean? That was a mountain that the Kentucky football program climbed last week and was able to overcome.
Their third violation.
Pay that $250 all day.
Yeah,
bro.
yeah. Busting out the chrome helmets this week.
Never thought you would ask.
Yeah.
You take cash?
Yes.
Here you go. Remember, Hebert's Specialty Meats, Highway 73, boudin, turduckens, crackling, great selections over there. In fact, they got a real nice stuffed rabbit if you want to pick that up over at Hebert's right now. Check it out online, hebertmarkets.com, hebertmarkets.com. Highway 73, Dutchtown Shopping Center, right next to Dutchtown High School, getting you set up for the weekends and getting you set up for home as well. Remember, the stuffed chicken, the deboned stuffed chicken. If you want to just throw that in the oven when you get home, you'll have something to eat on for the next couple of days for you and the kids. Hebert's Markets, Hebert's Specialty Meats. Good conversation with Ross Dellenger. We'll talk to Nick Underhill coming up here in a couple of minutes and get his thoughts on the New Orleans Saints as they slide into a regular season weekend here. They'll be up in the capital city as well. They'll be up in the capital at Washington, D.C., right there in Dellenger's neighborhood, taking on the New Orleans Saints. Give us a couple of seconds here. We'll be back, and we'll talk New Orleans Saints football with Ross Dellenger right here on the Jordy Culotta Show, which is driven and powered every single day by Go Chevrolet, GEAUX Chevrolet.com. 2 locations, LaPlace, Louisiana, and over here in Baton Rouge to the used car lot, Go Express Auto Sales. Go Chevrolet, proud supporter here of the Jordy Culotta Show.
Bikes are hot. Happy birthday, Jay. Woo!
Wow, happy birthday. 4-1.
True Blue Water, true hydration at its finest. Right now, you're only a few minutes away from getting your 5-gallon water delivered to you, just like we are over here at the UDL. All you got to do is log on to truebluewater.com. That's TRU, bluewater.com. The website's fantastic over at truebluewater.com. You can get your service and find out how quick it is. You can schedule a delivery, even hop on the billing system right there at truebluewater.com. TRU, bluewater.com. Papa Earl's, the fine spice, originating right down here in South Louisiana by our guy Mark Pop Norman. Developed it back in 2018 and won Amazon's Newcomer of the Year in 2019. They pride themselves in having 30% less salt and sodium than the leading brands at the same price point. You can find them locally. Look for Papa Earl's at Rouse's, Calandro's, Mathern's, High Neighbor, and more. True Blue Water, true hydration at its finest. Right now, you're only a few minutes away from getting your 5-gallon water delivered to you, just like we are over here at the UDL. All you got to do is log on to truebluewater.com. That's TRU, bluewater.com. The website's fantastic over at truebluewater.com. You can get your service and find out how quick it is. You can schedule a delivery, even hop on the billing system right there at truebluewater.com. TRU bluewater.com. Welcome back to a Wednesday edition of the Jordy Culotta Show. Shout out to Katie Allagood and the whole crew over here making today special. We appreciate it. She's down in Mexico celebrating an anniversary. Happy anniversary to her and David.
Turns out I didn't get the call to house set. I wonder who did.
You screwed something up last time. You must have screwed it up. I see Noah's coming in here.
He's so responsible.
Yeah, he's smelling rich. Speaking of it, Nick Underhill, he's our guy over at NewOrleans.football. If you have not subscribed and gotten a subscription over there, you don't care about the Saints. Because if you care about the Saints, the greatest information that you can get is over at NewOrleans.football. And that is our guy, Nick Underhill, who is with us every Wednesday here on the Jordy Culotta Show. Remember the podcast and the YouTube channel that you can get over at NewOrleans.football. Saints are traveling to Washington, coming off of a tough loss versus New York. Let's get the latest. Nick, good morning. How are you?
Hey, doing well. How you guys doing?
Doing okay. That was brutal last Sunday, right? I mean, that was a hell of a loss.
It was, yeah. I mean, that was probably as bad of a loss as you can imagine. The fan reaction, I think, reflects that. This is probably the most angry I've seen Saints fans in 7 years of being around the team. But yeah, I mean, look, that's a game that they have to win in the way they're playing and the way they're limited right now with the players being out and the suspensions and the injuries. You can't afford to lose games, and that was a game they had in hand. And, you know, the way it kind of fell apart, it felt a little bit self-inflicted. Some decisions, the approach in the fourth quarter, I think, kind of cost them that game. And, you know, honestly, you go back and you pause it, say 9 minutes in the fourth quarter. I mean, it looks like they should have won that game 30-11 or something like that, and somehow they found a way to lose it. So yeah, I mean that was about as brutal of a loss as you could imagine.
Is Peyton good for one of those a year where he wants you to know he's the smartest guy in the room? I thought he just kind of overthought it a little bit.
You know, I don't know if I agree with that 100% that he overthought it. I mean, I thought the Taysom Hill pass was misguided. I wouldn't send him out there to throw a deep ball. I mean, how many of those have we seen? And it seems like every single one of them is underthrown. I mean, you go back, there was one to Emmanuel Sanders last year. He caught it, but it was underthrown by probably 15 yards. So that's one where, you know, I'm looking at him like, what are you doing? It's hard, though, man. You go back and you start sorting through it. The field goal, too, was also brutal. You send the guy out for a 58-yard field goal. He's never hit from 58, and he's struggling as it is. That just seemed like putting him in a situation to fail.
Rosas had to be thinking, God damn, man.
He's trying to fire me. He's trying to fire me.
What is this?
You want me to do a quick kick to punt it?
God damn it.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, so he was kind of, you know, left out to dry there. And you know, the one they passed up, too, if you're playing an approach where you're preserving points and then you go for it on fourth down instead of kicking the field goal, it kind of feels like you're at odds with your philosophies a little bit. And they lost because they're trying to protect what they have. And they won the game against the Patriots playing the exact same fashion. They had a drive. They ran the ball. They won the game because they were able to run the ball. And I just think Peyton felt like he could do the same thing in this game. He won the same way in week 1 against Green Bay. And that seems to be what he wants to do to kind of offset, you know, all these players being out. And when your wide receivers are 2 undrafted guys, 2 cast-offs, and a converted running back, it kind of makes sense to not put as much onus on the passing game. But in a game where it's flowing a little bit and your quarterback's hit 12 of 12, maybe you do look at it and you shift gears a little bit. But, in the moment they run 3 times in a row, they're up 11. There's 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. In that moment, it's hard to look at it and say, what are you doing? Yeah. Because it's worked and you run to protect leads in the NFL. But you got to be able to conserve it, and you got to look at how your defense is playing. Maybe you got to look at how your quarterback's playing. And if you're the guy being paid, $8 million to make those decisions, maybe, you got to change your approach and foresee it. But it's hard for me to level that criticism on that drive. And I kind of feel like that's the drive where the game turned. But in the moment I'm looking at it, and I wasn't thinking, what are you doing? He sends Taysom out on third down. I'm not looking at him thinking, what are you doing? Because the third downs with Taysom, I think, are part of the reason why they have that 11-point lead. That he ran for a touchdown. He had a pass on 3rd and 2. He ran for another one. So you get out there, you put him out there on 3rd and 2 again. There should be an expectation that he converts. It's when Taysom's throwing down the field, though. Every single time, I'm just like, why are you doing that? You got Breeze, you got Jameis Winston. He doesn't need to be doing it. I think he does need to be able to throw some, but not a pass, 40 yards through the air. Let him try to hit an 11-yard slant to keep the defense honest. So yeah, I mean, there was definitely some stuff with the coaching. Peyton's already owned it. He talked for like 25 minutes on Monday and was pretty open about some of his decisions and some of his regrets about that game. But, I think it was just a lot of factors. And when you're playing like that, the margins razor thin in the defense. And it's insane to even put anything on defense because you give up 21 in an NFL game, and the league average points per game is 24, to be just a mediocre team. Like 21 points, you got to win in regulation. But, when you're playing like that and it's razor thin, you need your defense to give up 14 points. And they didn't. And, they lost again.
Don't those things go hand in hand, though, with Taysom Hill? Don't you want him to be able to – because the threat of him coming in the football game is the obvious he's going to run the football. So for him to do the, the quintessential, like, take 2 steps forward and drop back and throw a deep ball, isn't that what they're going for there? It's almost like a trick play.
Yeah, no, it is. And 100%. The problem is that I just don't think he executes them well. Yeah, every time you see it, they aren't executed well. And sometimes you catch them out of position, and they're so out of position that the underthrown pass doesn't matter. But, like, maybe find a way to, get him on a 18-yard post route where he gets behind the safeties if they cheat up instead of trying to throw that deep down the field. Like, you got to do something to kind of mitigate that and eliminate that risk, because every time that ball goes up, it just feels so extremely risky. And every time the wide receiver's coming back to the ball, they're never hitting stride. And if someone just spots that and, they're able to look, if you know that tendency too, and you're thrown to a 5'6" receiver against a 6'1" cornerback, I mean, it just seems like it's set up to fail. And I just don't like that call there. And I don't think it was necessary. I don't feel like they needed to go for it all in that moment. And it just kind of felt like they got him once on the play before, and they were going to find another way to get him. And, technically the call wasn't horrible. The play would have worked with a better throw, but you got to know who's throwing the ball. And I know he got his foot caught in the ground and everything, but that's on the QB. That's your mechanics. I mean, that's not an excuse, in my opinion, for that pass not being good. So it's just, every time I hate it. I just hate seeing those plays, and they just don't work. And when they do work, they shouldn't work because the execution isn't there.
The site is neworleans.football. Make sure and subscribe today. Also, get over to the YouTube channel, no.football, to keep up with the latest of the podcast. It's a great follow there. One on personnel, and I when I saw the holding on Adam Troutman last week, and I kind of was like, wow, I almost kind of forgot about Trout. Where has he been?
Not where he needs to be, I guess. I mean, it just really hasn't quite been good enough with him. Third round pick. He was counted on really to be one of the guys to help with this transition. I think they were expecting a whole lot more from him. And, he's just not really getting it done at this point. Unfortunately, the only times you really notice him are for negative moments. He was on the receiving end of one of those third down passes from Taysom. But, I think they were expecting a whole lot more from him in the passing game. And at this point, it's been extremely underwhelming. And, that's a surprise to me a little bit, because you look at his college games, and he looked really athletic in the passing game. And I thought that was going to be the aspect of his game that translated quicker. And this is kind of weird to say after he just got called for a holding that cost them, probably a game-deciding touchdown. But his blocking has been a lot better than the receiving. He gets, put on a defensive end there. Having the hold isn't something that I necessarily, put a huge red mark against him. That was a tough matchup for him, and he's kind of left out to dry. Was it Leonard Williams? I think it was Leonard Williams he was up against.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough blocking assignment for a tight end, especially a second-year guy. But, yeah, I mean, he needs to figure that out and ramp it up quickly. And, I don't know if it's going to happen this year. It seems like it should be better. Something's, holding them back. Maybe when Mike Thomas comes back, Traquan Smith comes back, things open up a little bit and they can operate their offense, a little bit differently. Maybe there's some easier, spots. Maybe some things in zone open up a little bit more for him. But it's been, I think it's fair to say it's been extremely underwhelming to this point.
50 carries over the last 2 weeks for Alvin Kamara. How do you like where his workload is early on in the season, and is that what we should expect? 24 carries versus New England, 26 carries versus New York, and he's obviously a weapon in the passing game as well.
Yeah, I think that's something that you look at it, and it's – I think, most people are probably a little bit uncomfortable seeing him run the ball 24 times between the tackles in a game. He's the most important player on the team, and if he gets hurt, I think everything falls apart at that point. And the last year he stayed healthy. A couple of years before that, there were some injury issues. So seeing him kind of take those hits, it's it's a little unsettling, and it's something that you kind of do got to worry about. I think going deeper into the season. Thankfully, I think they just need to get through 1 week, and then kind of the approach should change a little bit. I think Mike Thomas is that important that it's going to kind of change their offensive identity moving forward. And I think at this point, it's just kind of survive, advance, win games however you can, let it be ugly, and let it get going. So, yeah, the workload is something that I'm keeping an eye on. One more game, maybe they got to go like this, and then it eases up a little bit. You watch him on those runs, and some of that incredibleness, it's a little more obvious out in space, but seeing it in those condensed areas just over the course of the game where he's turning, I think he had 80-some yards after first contact last week, and it was just unbelievable. He's, spinning through guys, maintaining his balance. In these close quarters, it doesn't pop as much as it does, say, like on the Green Bay screen last year where he's making multiple guys miss, but those same qualities are there, and it's been incredible to watch, and, there just really haven't been those prolonged exposures of him kind of running through the tackles, and seeing it puts him in a little bit of a different light. For me, the passing game stuff with him is extremely confusing. Not getting the target in this game.
I agree.
I don't know how that happens. I mean, I think you got to figure out a way to get him the ball in space and let him try to make people miss, because that's the quality that has made him special and makes you look at him and say, hey, this guy's a generational talent. So that's something that's missing from the offense, and I'm not quite clear why. I mean, I get maybe the number of targets not being the same because you got a quarterback now who can throw down the field, who's looking down the field, who's taking a little more time to go through his reads to see what opens up. And, with Breeze, it was one read, check down to Alvin, off he goes, because that's how Breeze had to play. So, those opportunities come apart isn't a shock. But I think you got to, scheme that in and call plays specifically to get him the ball. And I think there were a few in this game. You saw him getting chipped coming out of the backfield, and that probably just messed up the timing. And, Jameis is looking off him as soon as he sees that. But, I think you have to find a way. I mean, he's your best player. Get him in space, let him make some stuff happen.
We talked about the workload of Kamara, and then Tony Jones Jr. goes down with an ankle injury. Then you have Latavius Murray leading the Ravens in carries on Sunday. I don't want to think the Saints, made the wrong decision, but how did they kind of spell this run game with bringing in a free agent, a practice squad player from Jacksonville? This didn't seem like the route that they wanted to go in the backfield.
No, I agree there. And if you knew you were going to be running the ball 40 times a game, letting Murray go is something that looks a little curious in hindsight, because I think he's a different type of runner, too, than Tony Jones. I think Tony Jones is more in the mold of Alvin, outside zone stuff, one-cut type back, where Murray was the hammer, and I think he could have served them well in the way that these games are being played. Just
wear a defense down.
Yeah, and that's how they want to play, and they're pounding it up the gut, and they don't have that guy. I'm not even going to try to say his name, Divine. They brought him back from Jacksonville. He's someone they liked before. We'll see how he fits. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think this is where they wanted to end up. And letting Murray go is a little bit weird looking at this point, given how they wanted to play these games.
Last one, I'll get you out of here. It looks like the Stephon Gilmore situation up at New England is going to end badly. It looks like they're going to part ways. Would the Saints have interest? Can they afford a player like him?
So if you wanted to bring him in, I think you'd probably need at least about 2.4, maybe 2 million in cap space just to structure it. Assuming he wants 10 million, he's apparently wanted 15. So you prorate it down, it'd be about 10 million left to fit him cleanly. That's kind of where you need to be. The Saints never do anything cleanly, so they could do it at a lower price. They did have interest in him before they traded for Bradley Roby, but then now they have Roby. They got Paulson Adebo. I don't know if I necessarily see a fit. I wouldn't close the door on it because they're never afraid of building a strength on a strength. They brought in Quan after, knowing they had Pete Werner. So that's stuff that they do. If I had to put my money on it, just looking at the way the league goes, I mean, he got cut, and I read the tweet, and I was like, oh, he's going to be a buck by the end of the day. I mean, that's just kind of how it feels like things are going. I'd be surprised if he came here, though, but I wouldn't be shocked just because that's the Saints, and they're always big game hunting.
Werner looked good. 10 tackles last week. I mean, look, he was around the ball a lot, man.
He was legitimately he was outstanding in that game, no doubt.
Yeah.
He had 3 or 4 plays that were the screen where he fought through 2 blocks to make a tackle. He played the run really well. I mean, he was just right place, right time whole game.
Nick Underhill, NewOrleans.football. Get the subscription, and you hear him every Wednesday right here on the Jordy Culotta Show. Thank you, man.
Back? Will Lutz?
Not yet. He's still hurt. They signed it. Cody Parkey.
Double doink?
Yeah.
Rosas, go kick a 60-yarder. Get out there.
You're lucky one in New York because we would have left your ass there.
Thank you, Nick. Have a great weekend, man.
Yeah, you too.
Later, buddy. There is
they need Will Lutz so bad.
There's Nick Underhill. Rosas, you're in. You want me? Kick it.
Do
you
what?
bum.
Go prove me right about being bad.
Dan, we're brought to you by RMB Builders. Remember Rhett Bourgeois and his crew, rmb-builders.com. Get in touch with Rhett, whether you need a custom design home, whether you need handiwork around the house done, a custom-made project. If you're a commercial and you need something done around the job or the office, get in touch with Rhett, rmb-builders.com, rmb-builders.com. That's where you can find them online. Good show today. Appreciate Nick Underhill for stopping by, talking some New Orleans Saints. Always the best, really and truly. If you care about the Saints, man, you've got to have a subscription, Underhill. He's got the best information, man.
I mean, talk about just a terrible week to be a Louisiana sports fan.
Oof.
I wanted to ask him about the atmosphere in the dome.
It looks great.
I thought that would have been enough to just say, you're playing the Giants.
Yeah. Right.
I thought that would have been
Same thing
enough
with
to
LSU.
carry. Yes.
Same thing with
And they
LSU.
both did the same thing where you get to the fourth quarter, like, surely there's no, like, you feel comfortable watching the game, at least if it were
Right.
from the Saints' perspective. LSU, I did not. I saw that thing coming. I sniffed it out at the
When I saw
third
OT,
quarter.
I was like, they're going to overtime?
Oh, we forgot to ask him about Jabril Peppers.
Oh.
Call him again.
So good. Good stuff. Somebody asked me something in here, and I told him I was going to get back to it at the end of the show and answer it. Damn it.
Tyrann Mathieu for LSU head coach. Is that what it was?
Should be.
Bring him in now.
Should be.
Katie Orr gets called up to the Saints.
They would
tomorrow.
take Katie Work in a heartbeat.
Oh, what's the deal? Why can't Cole Tracy get? He just doesn't have the power.
Doesn't have the
Doesn't have the
legs.
leg.
Just doesn't have the power.
I mean, he's accurate. Like, he's going to hit him, but they just don't have confidence
If
that you can
you're-
put him out there for 50.
I would imagine if you're like a Bucks, Chiefs, Bills, where you
Right.
can get inside like 45 yards, like at least we know we're cashed from here. Like they'll probably go for it in that kind of go zone between
Yeah.
the 50 and the 45.
Well, I mean,
50 and
look
the 40.
look at how the Los Angeles Chargers handle fourth downs now.
Everybody, Lane
I mean,
Kiffin
just
did
go
the same
for it.
thing.
Well, I mean, that made sense. I think Lane Kiffin taking criticism over that is a little unfound. I mean, you've got to score touchdowns against Alabama. Maybe on the opening drive, on that first one, when that second fourth down where they convert the first one, and then on the second fourth down, you're thinking, okay, let me just score the points and sit these people down. But I guess if you go into a game with a plan, he stuck to it. And he said, I got to go for it on fourth downs because I got to score points. And if you don't score points against Alabama and you kick field goals, you're going to lose. It's going to be a long day.
Look at LSU Auburn. Like the proof is in the pudding. And you could even look at Alabama Florida. What did Florida do on its opening drive? They had to kick a field goal. They got down into the red zone and settled for 3, and that ends up being the difference maker in the game. Like Urban Meyer. Lane Kiffin watched all of that, and he saw the games before. When you play Alabama and you match 3, because Alabama's scoring touchdowns.
Right.
You can't go 3 versus 7 all day because you'll lose, and he knew that going in. It may not have looked pretty on the scoreboard, but you're taking your chance because it's the only way we can win the game.
Yeah.
I mean, the question that you.
What's that?
I got the question that you.
Oh, nice. Hit me.
Jordy, what did you see in O when you pushed for him as coach? Not busting on you at all. Want your genuine take because I also wanted him as coach.
Well, first and foremost, I thought that what you were getting with Ed Orgeron, that he was going to be a breath of fresh air from Les Miles. First and foremost, right? I thought that he was going to bring in here energy. I thought he was going to bring passion. I knew that this was the job that ultimately he would die for. He would have walked from Los Angeles to Baton Rouge to be LSU's head coach. I mean, just would have done anything to get that gig. And that's what Les had lost at the end. He had lost so much of the passion for the job, and I wonder if he ever really had the true passion to be the LSU head football coach, but that was gone at the end. So what Orgeron was bringing in was that first and foremost, and a clear plan of how he was going to operate. And he was going to operate under the sense of a CEO model, a lot what Sam Pittman's doing in Fayetteville, and Ed Orgeron kind of started here in Baton Rouge, was that he didn't have a specialty. You know, he wasn't a defensive guy. He wasn't an offensive guy. We talk about Lane Kiffin being an offensive genius. He comes in, he's your head coach. Overnight, your offense is soothed. Your offense is fixed. Ed Orgeron, if he's the head coach, he fixes recruiting, which is big. That means a lot. So with Ed Orgeron handling the recruiting, and what he was selling then was Lane Kiffin calling plays and Dave Aranda, your defensive coordinator, and he was going to stay in front of being able to replenish those positions and make sure that you've got the brightest and clearest minds of teaching the sport on the offensive, defensive side of the ball. I thought it was a good formula. I really did. I mean, I'm not here to say and look back that I was against it. Even kind of like in my heart, I was thinking this is going to work. This is going to work if Orgeron is spearheading recruiting, which he has a reputation of being very dominant at in college football. You've got Lane Kiffin and Dave Aranda as the coordinators to start off with. Man, that is a hell of a team that you can put together. Now, it will be a quick turnover because Lane's probably going to get a head coaching job pretty soon. If the defense performs, then Aranda could be up in a couple of years. But what Orgeron was telling you was that he is going to make sure that he's out in front, keeping those spots filled, and filled with guys that aren't fifth, sixth choices. And I'm not banging on Durante Jones because I think Durante Jones has performed on the defensive side of the ball. He's had a crew that you know, he's been dealt some circumstances, but they've improved. He's coaching. They're getting better.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But it wouldn't take you to get to your fourth or fifth guy as a choice, because you almost had those guys in the system and they were just working themselves up, right? Like, I mean, the way that I kind of figured it would go was that if Dave Aranda was the defensive coordinator, and let's say Lane Kiffin was the offensive coordinator, well, then they would bring their understudies and guys that they would be grooming for the job, right? Or almost teaching them on the job how to play call, how to be effective as a play caller. So you're almost just kind of recycling that position throughout the life of Orgeron. Now, if something quirky happens and Lane gets the job and he makes one of those guys the offensive coordinator wherever he goes, then you've got people in the pipeline that you're prepared to make that move for. That's what we all bought, I thought, as people that supported Orgeron's hire. And at the time, I did. And I thought that was the model in which it was going to operate. Now, a huge red flag for those supporters would have been the Lane Kiffin hire doesn't happen. Matt Canada is the most popular name. He's inserted as the OC, and Orgeron, he interviews him over the phone for 15 minutes, figures out that they want it, they come up with the money. 2 weeks into the gig, they realize they hate each other and can't work together and can't stand in the same office together. And they can't get on the same page of offensive philosophy. And the next thing you know, they're all sitting down in Joe Oliva's office together watching film at the SEC level, where you've got the OC, the head coach, and the AD flipping through film,
Taking
breaking
notes.
down, like asking each other, what are we thinking here? I mean, almost just
Joe, what do
like
you got?
freshman football type stuff. So, that's what I thought that's what I thought was the model. That's what I thought Orgeron was going to be able to perform at. That's what I thought was going to be the formula every single year to keep it up and operating. And he's just shown that he's been incapable of making those hires. The Joe Brady hit on Joe Brady looks like a shot in the dark where, he just struck gold. And everybody else has kind of been who he is. He didn't get along with Dave Aranda at the end. Him and Matt Canada hated one another. There's rumors right now that him and Jake Peets can't see eye to eye. Him and Pete Jenkins were lifelong football soulmates before he got the LSU job. Pete Jenkins comes on to the gig his first year here. They end up going sideways, and Pete Jenkins ends up on Alabama's staff during that season going through bowl prep with Saban. That was what I believed was Ed Orgeron's football godfather.
Confidant.
Yeah, like that was his guy. He brought him with him everywhere he went. USC, when he was named the interim job, Pete Jenkins. LSU, named the interim job, Pete Jenkins. Named the permanent job, Pete Jenkins. Soon as Pete Jenkins could turn on Ed Orgeron, he turned and went and helped out Saban for bowl preparation. Just all of these guys. The common denominator out of everybody leaving is Ed Orgeron. So it's evident that model and formula in which, the binder was selling everybody on was a fraud. That's harsh, but it was fake. It felt we were duped. The supporters were duped. I feel like I was hoodwinked because that's not what this is. You know what I mean? That's not what LSU football, how it operates. That's not, the equation that pops out the answer to be successful. They're just kind of pissing in the wind. They're reaching for straws. It feels like the play calling to the timeouts distribution is just a shot in the dark. What do we want to call here? I don't know. This worked last week. We'll call it.
Doesn't it seem like they're not communicating at all?
Yes.
Whenever you get to the bare bones of how the football team looks and how, especially on the offensive end, this shit should be hemmed up way before you get to Saturday. Certainly before you get to your first game, and then for it to rear its head again. 3 weeks later, after you thought you had it fixed, whatever, there seems to be a simple solution, which was to go fast.
Yeah.
It seems like that's what Max Johnson had thrived in. And then you almost just hit the park brake on it and just say, no, we're going back to check with Mies. And it's look, whoever's saying what to whom, they just say, look, obviously that's not working. We can't do that anymore.
How about Orgeron telling the press guy the other day, good idea? on putting the coach in the box. I don't know if he was trolling him or I don't know if he was being genuine. If he was being genuine.
Well, I'm sure he's being genuine because you go back to the Joe Brady Ensminger model where you have a calming presence in the booth where he's just, a lip of red man. He's like, should I call this? Yeah, go for it. It's just a little reaffirmation.
I think it was a good idea. I just think it's the fact that Coach O was like, I didn't think of that. Thank you.
That might be that is a problem if he hasn't thought of it.
That's the problem.
He's
that's
crediting
the
the
issue.
journalist with a game planning idea.
Let me get a question in there. What a double reverse. No, he fakes. No, he thinks about faking.
Coach, follow me here. I'm going to flip my Zoom and get to this whiteboard real quick. Tell me if this makes sense for you. That's a good idea. Put it in. Here's the name of it.
Annexation of Puerto Rico. But if Coach O's in that mold that we thought would work, what does he do during the days?
It's a good question.
Would he have been scouting other coaches ooh, he might be available? That would seem like much more of an undertaking than coaching a football team is trying to coach 5 football teams and figure out who the next hire is. the model's not sustainable in my mind. Even if you're Sam Pittman, like, how do you go find the next hot name?
Right.
If you're Arkansas, it's like nobody wants to go coach at Arkansas. Like, you can only strike gold so many times with a rehab program, essentially, for what it was for the Bryles of the world. But I mean, a lot of people are just going to go pick Alabama and go be an analyst. Like, it's hard to find. Like, even Nick Saban beat you to the punch on that because he can just scoop up a Bill O'Brien or
and
an analyst.
he can pay you.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, LSU was trying to hire Major Applewhite as their quarterbacks coach or their OC a couple of years back. Like, going to give him an on-the-field position, and Saban swooped in and gave him like $150,000 more to be an analyst.
To do less.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, not even to officially be on the squad, to be on the coaching staff. I mean, you can't be on the field during the game. You can't wear a headset during the game. I mean, it's all these
Tell that
rules.
to Will Muschamp.
Yeah, I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, George Munoz he's an analyst. I mean, poor George Munoz, really and truly. I mean, could you imagine what it would be like to be in the headset of Ed Orgeron trying to direct him to run a football game? Could you? I mean, it would be like the passenger. It would be like sitting in the passenger seat of a 12-year-old driving a car on the interstate.
You can't reach.
You know what I mean? Just like, holy shit! Oh, watch out! Hit the brakes! I mean, like. You know, and the 12-year-old's like the rich kid that you can't discipline. You know what I mean?
Like the cigarette.
Yeah, right. You can't smoke. Yeah, right. Yeah, I can. You know what I mean? This is my dad's car.
Yeah.
You know, like,
You got pedals on that end or no?
I mean, just could you imagine what it's like to be the in-game director of an Ed Orgeron run football game? That's got to be what it's like to be a driving teacher. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
that has to be what it's like. Like, you don't have any control. Like, you're like, my life is in this 12-year-old's hands. You know what I mean? Like,
Let's hit the interstate.
I mean, like, go ahead and merge on here. Make sure it hits your blinker.
Get on the
You know, like,
Other blinker, other
yeah,
way.
right. The hazard lights are on. Just,
I mean, could you imagine being him in that situation where you're like, we're going to have to call another time. I'm going to have to tell, we need to call another timeout.
Call another timeout. Like, you have to call another timeout. Or just get a I would have just taken the penalty.
At some point, you
Yeah,
take
some
it.
Just like, I'm not calling another timeout.
And then, where were you on that one, dipshit? It's
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
Coach, we
just-
got one.
Yeah, just like we can't call another timeout.
Yeah.
Do we want an opportunity to get the ball back after they score at the end of the game? Because if so, we can't burn another one.
Lesser of two evils.
I mean,
here.
this is going to be the fourth time we've done this tonight. If you do 4 of these in a season, you look out of control. They did 4 in 4 quarters and really only did them in 3.
And if they had more, they'd have done it more.
Just amazing. I mean, it is amazing to see the incompetence, really. I mean, like, you know, Christian, to answer your question, man, you know, like, what did I see to support? I don't know. Like, looking back, I wonder, like, what the hell? I mean, but you ask what supportive, you know, measures were there that made me buy in, and that was it. You know, I mean, I thought that, you know, the LSU job was going to be a place that, you know, he really saw an opportunity to stamp his legacy as a football coach when all he's done is taken everything that the people believed on the other side of the argument, the Ole Miss crowd that were saying all you're doing is hiring the guy at Ole Miss from 10 years ago that was ripping his shirt off, busting Red Bulls off of his face, and trying to fight his team. You know, I mean, like, it was, you know, and doing Hummer commercials. I mean, it was a joke there. It's become a joke here. I mean, look, LSU is the butt of national jokes, the LSU football program. Kirk Herbstreit, ESPN College Game Day podcast, the Cover 3 podcast, CBS Sports, Josh Pate on 247. These people hit hundreds of thousands of people when they speak. The message that they're sending around LSU football is that they're laughing at them. I mean, they're you know, I mean, Josh Pate says piss poor culture. Kirk Herbstreit wonders if they even want to be there and play. Wonders if Orgeron's checked in. The Cover 3 podcast is just detailing how out of control LSU is from a organizational standpoint, from a cultural standpoint. I mean, the news is out on LSU. People are talking within that crowd. People are probably looking for jobs. People are trying to probably secure if they have a place to go next. Could you imagine being Brad Davis? Could you imagine leaving Arkansas's offensive line as their coach, coming to LSU, to your dream job, coming home to Baton Rouge, coming in at the midpoint, really, of the football year, in the middle of the summer? That's, as far as preparation goes, that's you're behind the 8 ball.
Right.
And within 8 weeks, has he bought a house? I mean, if he's bought a house, I mean, there's a good chance that by the time he closes on it, Ed Orgeron could be out of a job. Now, I don't know what the plans are on whatever could be next, but I mean, that's the stuff that we don't think about in the coaching world. This guy just uprooted his family from a very successful program in which the identity of their success was his group. You know what I mean? Like, the Arkansas success is really built around the offensive line and their ability to run the football. And Brad Davis was the coach of that position. Orgeron has to call him midsummer because the offensive line he's got on staff, his buddy, his guy, that he's doing, really kind of a favor, who can't recruit, who, when he's trying to recruit, is doing it illegally, and
can't develop.
That has not developed a player since he was on staff. He's got to replace him midsummer. And now, midway through the season, they could be out. And I don't know Brad Davis. I know he's got a great reputation that he can coach the spot, but anybody in that position is set up to fail, right? Like, you bring me in midway and say, coach this group who, we can't even really get them all 5 on the field at the same time.
Not only that, but when you go and look at how you heard the offensive line say, well, we're taught two totally different techniques. So Brad Davis had to get here and be like, this thing's a shit show. Like, who's coaching you how to do it this?
No doubt about it.
He's like, this is not, like, we have to start over.
Yeah, well, like, we've got to crumble this thing.
Right.
Like, we've got to totally
everything you've learned,
rehaul.
You're learning a new language now.
And Ed Ingram said so in the first game.
Right.
I mean, he was like, look, we've been challenged because we're learning new stuff. One thing that we learned was totally blown up, and we're learning how to block it and scheme it in a totally different way. And, good, bad, or indifferent, that's what happens when you make a coaching change 2 months before the season kicks off. You have to anticipate that type of stuff.
Dude, there's red flags everywhere that we were just like, oh, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing that they brought Brad Davis. It's like, this isn't going to work in time. Like, there's not enough time. And we should have known that this thing was a little shaky from the onset of the season.
Well, we were talking about the offensive line for a long time.
Oh, I know that, but then we were talking about before the coaching change. Did they make a change? You're like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? They do it during a massive recruiting weekend where they're bringing people on campus for
just
the first time. And Brad
Yeah.
Davis can't talk to anybody. Craig can't talk to anybody. You just have linemen floating around like, where do I go? Like, who's here to recruit me? Like, the whole thing is just, like you said, dude, just red flags everywhere.
Everywhere. Red flags everywhere. And red flags since day one. I mean, that Matt Canada situation, say that out loud. You know what I mean? Like, think about that. Think if, like, somebody else anywhere was watching film with the AD in the middle of a game week. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
when can we all sit down?
Hold up. You go do your job. I'm going to do my job. Like,
I'll be in here alone.
This is unbelievable, man.
The AD doesn't have anything else to do. He can watch film on a Wednesday. That's awesome.
This is amazing.
Cush job.
Joe Oliva, of all people.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we're
Basketball guy.
gonna have a film session in my office.
Are you watching lacrosse?
What a debacle, bro. I mean, LSU is just, a debacle.
But if they went out, still a spot there.
A win out. I mean, like, what do you think the odds are?
I will shave my head if we win.
Powerball numbers.
Even if we only lose to Bama, I'll shave
Powerball numbers.
Powerball numbers.
I mean, that's Powerball type numbers that they would win out.
There's no way.
Yeah, cut an arm off.
I mean, absolutely.
Don't even think about it. Like, I'll make any bet you want.
I'll bet you a limb.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it just...
You can do it on the show.
Amazing, man. It is wild to see where LSU is.
And as bad as we think it is, it has to be worse.
Oh,
like,
it's so much worse.
Like,
So
you could
much
hear
worse.
like Dellenger dancing around a little bit of what he was trying to say without saying it. But if this much has leaked out to the public, imagine the internal strife going on in all those buildings. We're like, We can't. This is how long can this last? How much gas is still in that tank?
Jeez, they got to be on fumes, huh?
Yeah, just Kramer down the highway.
Daniel Newman is our financial advisor. He's over at Edward Jones. Connect with him today. You can find him online at, if you want to just email him, daniel.newman@edwardjones.com. Easy to get in touch with him. He's an experienced financial advisor. He has got a great history of working with people in the financial service industry, skilled in long-term care, insurance, budgeting, retirement income planning, wealth strategies, simple IRA strategies, strong finance professional. You can get in touch with him. Daniel.Newman@edwardjones.com. Daniel.Newman@edwardjones.com is easy to get in touch with Daniel Newman. Find him there at Daniel.Newman@edwardjones.com. Good show today. Thank you for Nick Underhill for stopping by. Thank you to Ross Dellenger for being here. Megan Making Money will be here tomorrow. We'll talk to Barstool Sports' own on a Thursday. We'll also go up on Friday to Mincy in Vegas, whose World Series of Poker debut for the Destroyer was not what we were looking for. 350th place, I believe, on his
Too
first.
much going on.
A lot going on. So make sure you like this post, please. Like, share, comment before we get out of here. We appreciate that very much.
Ring that bell.
That's right. Set the notifications. We could give you some content at some time here outside of 7 and 9. Have a great Wednesday. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
Bro.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you, buddy.
Red wine? We
Thank
getting
you.
back in it? Get back on the sauce?
Still a little shook. Still a little shook.
Have you not had a sip since?
I hadn't had a sip.
Wow.
I hadn't had a sip.
Wow. See, my move is just get right back on that horse.
No, I hear you.
Yeah, and there's only one way to cure
Party
that.
in a different corner these days, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Couple of quarters.
All you drunks go over there and slobber over each other and talk about puking and passing out. We'll be over here telling cool stories.
You're the one puking and passing out, bro.
with the alcoholics, you drunks, bro. Leave me alone. I like my corner.
My schedule out.
I like my corner, man. I got a good view over here. Brandon Hollingsworth said, "When does Will Wade come back on?"
Meyer.
Yeah. Thank you. It's much more peaceful over here. We're not as handsy over here in public.
We just go home at that point.
That's right. We keep it smart.
Yeah.
All you drunks over there ended up on Twitter and Facebook. Have a good day.